Yes, alright folks, today I have a great video for you. We're going to take a look at what is the best settings for the DJI Rsc2 and RS2 gimbal. Yes, how do you get the smoothest footage possible out of these two gimbals? So, here we go. Alright, so as I said, we are going to take a look at the DJI Rsc2 settings. These will also apply for the DJI Rs2 gimbal, but we're using the DJI Rsc2 for this video. So let me go ahead and put this away. So before we start, there's one thing you have to make sure to do, and that is to balance your gimbal correctly. I've already done that, and if you don't know how to do it, I've made a video about that, and I will link that down in the description. But once you have balance your camera, you can go ahead and do a balance test, and it is pretty simple. You will need to connect the app to the DJI Rsc2. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so I have connected my Ronin app to the DJI Rsc2, and on the front screen here we have something called balance test. If we open that up, you can see that in order to do this, you have to angle the gimbal in a 15 to 45 degree angle. So at least 15 degrees to make this work. So let's begin the test. So once it starts turning, the test is on. Alright, so that is done, and as you can see on the screen here, I got excellent on all the motors. So if you're new to gimbals, let me just briefly go over what the different motors are. So we put it into sleep mode. So the first motor down here is the pan motor. This one goes side to side. Then in the back here we have the roll motors. This one goes left to right. And right here on the side we have the tilt motor, which goes up and down. So tilt, roll, and pan. Once we have balanced the gimbal, the next thing you want to do is that you want to auto tune your gimbal. So you can do that within the app, but you can also just press the front trigger and hold the end button down for 4 seconds, and it will start auto tuning. There you go. So it's calibrating, also called auto tune. So I recommend that you auto tune your gimbal each and every time you are going to use your gimbal, because the gimbal will auto correct the amount of weight from the camera to the gimbal. So as you can see here, I have 60, 47, and 61, and this is what I get and what the gimbal has auto-corrected from the weight of the camera. The DJI Rsc2 and RS2 gimbal does a really great job of doing this, so I will just leave it at this. But the settings that you want to adjust is under advanced. So let's go into advanced, and then you're going to strength. The strength is also how smooth the gimbal will react. So I like to lower these settings as much as possible. So the lower the settings, the smoother the gimbal will react. So I will lower these to 8 and this one to 4 and pan to 4 as well. So 8, 4, 4. You can go all the way down to 1 and then it will be super smooth, but that is a little bit too slow for my needs. So 8, 4, 4 is a great starting point. So that is the motor strength, and this is what the gimbal will correct once it auto tunes. It won't correct any of your user settings, like under the user profile M1, 2, and 3. They will always remain the same. So on the DJI Rsc2, you can adjust some of these settings from the gimbal. You will need the Ronin app to customize all the parameters on the different motors. But if we go into the gimbal here, you can see that you can go into follow, and then you could go down to speed, and then it says 25 on custom. Then you got fast, medium, and slow. I like to use the custom mode to kind of dial in these settings. You can see if I press this one, I can scroll up and down, but right now we have it on 25 on M1. So to customize it, we'll have to go into the app. So let's take a look at my settings on the 3 profiles. So on the first setting M1, I have set to pan follow, which is the one that I use the most. And I have the parameters set on the follow speed to 25, 25, and 25. if you adjust the tilt and the roll and then adjust it on the gimbal afterwards, the settings will autocorrect in the app and be set as the same setting you set here. So if you set it to 25 here, all the other parameters will also be set to 25. So then we got deadband, and that is how much time does it take for the gimbal to react once you move it. This one I have set to 2, 2 and 2 on all the motors. So down at the bottom here we have something called control, and that is the joystick. You go into motion and there we have some options. We got deadband, max speed and smoothness. Let me tell you what these do. So this is the joystick, and deadband is how much do you have to move the joystick before the gimbal starts turning. Max speed is how fast does the gimbal turn, and the smoothness is how smooth does it ease in and out of that transition. So that is what these do. And as you can see, I got deadband set to 100, you got max speed set to 34 and smoothness set to 23. And I have all these parameters set the same on all the modes. So that was M1, and then we have M2. I have that set to pan, tilt, follow, PTF. And I've also set the pan to 25, but the tilt and the roll I have to 16 and 17. This is not super necessary. You can just go with 25 on all of those, but I'm just a bit nerdy, so I kind of like to finagle around with it. So therefore I've adjusted these parameters. Then again, deadband is on 2, 2, 2, and the same goes for control and on the motion. I've set that to the same on this mode as well. Let's go over that. Then we have the last option here, and that is mode 3, and I've set that to custom. When you get the gimbal, it is set to FPV, but I like to use the custom one and make my own settings, and that is the lock mode. I know that you can use lock by holding down the trigger, but if I need to use the gimbal without holding the trigger, if I'm going down low or up high, then I want to be able to release my finger from the trigger and hold the gimbal in a different way. So therefore I've made my own lock custom settings on M3. So the parameters here aren't that important, but I've set them all to as low as I can, 111, 000, but all the motors will be disabled, so it doesn't really matter what the settings are in here, as long as you set them to custom and you disable the motors. So disable the motors, you press all the motors so they are black, then none of the motors will be engaged. Alright, and then under control, I still motion. I have the same settings for the joystick because I will use the joystick to correct the gimbal instead of using the pan, push pan. So I'm using the joystick. If you want, you can set push pan on, push pan tilt, and then you can push the gimbal into any position. So that was my 3 custom settings, or my 3 custom modes, and the settings that you need to apply to get the smoothest gimbal as possible. I have also made a full PDF with a description of how to use these settings and the settings for both the DJI Rsc2 and RS2 gimbal. It is the exact same way you do it on the DJI Rs2. So go down the description and grab that PDF. It is a great one to have once you're on the shoot, because if you need to reset your gimbal, you can easily open that PDF and go in and readjust your settings. So just one thing to take into consideration, that is you might have to adjust some of these settings according to your camera setup. If you have a lighter setup than this, then you will have to lower some of those settings. And if you feel any vibrations from any of the motors, lower the settings until you can't feel any vibrations coming from any of the motors. That is very important, or else you will get useless footage with vibrations in it. Alright, that is how you adjust the settings. I hope this video was helpful for you. So next week I will also have a DJI Rsc2 video for you, but in the meanwhile you can watch this great video, which is the video that Peter McKinnon made for the DJI RS2 gimbals. And I showcase what kind of gimbal moves he uses in that video. It's a great video and I will link it down here so you can go back and watch that. that is kind of it, guys. I don't have any more for you. And of course, if this is the first time you're here, remember to subscribe if you want to learn more about filmmaking with motion. And lastly, stay creative and stay safe. And if you can, go out and shoot some dope videos. See you next time. Bye.
It's raining.